Hi, this is Tim of the 1916 Company. Welcome and thanks for logging on. If you love this watch, email us, Team Mosso at the1916company.com for purchase, pricing details, or availability inquiries. Today, we discuss the Audemars Piguet Royal Oak Extra Thin Jumbo, the core model in the entire line, one could say in the entire catalog, company-wide. This is the 15202ST, so it's the prior generation, but post-2012 15202 Jumbo. The watch, 39 millimeters in diameter and stainless steel, is 8.3 millimeters thick. And then from lug tip to lug tip, we're measuring just the case, 48.6 millimeters. And then these intermediate end links, these little plots, the total distance across the wrist is 52.3 millimeters. One reason why I always say a Royal Oak or an offshore on a bracelet wears a size or two larger than it really is. On my 16 centimeter circumference wrist, it wears more like a 40 or a 41. And that's because of the width across the wrist, which you can really see from this angle. Now down the barrel, you can see I've got a little bit of room to spare on each side. So I'd recommend this watch for a wrist of 14 centimeters circumference and up. And you can see it is very thin. It does live up to its extra thin billing. Now I mentioned this watch is a post-2012, but not the current model. The current model is called the 16202, and it has a lot of changes, not all for the better. So this was the version of the 15202 made after 2012, but before the arrival 2 years ago of the 16202. This is also the latest example I've ever seen, having been sold in 2017 and featuring a J alphanumeric serial number. This is the latest monoblock case I've encountered. I used to think that it was the I series where this changed, and it might be that an old case was still lying around for this J series watch, but sold in 17 with a monoblock case and a J-based serial number. That is a serial number starting with a J. This is the most recent monoblock I've ever encountered. The bracelet on a Royal Oak Jumbo takes somewhere between 9 and 11 hours to hand finish, and you could see the attention to detail, the satin finish contrasting with the polish. It's time well spent. When Gerald Genta, the designer, created the first Royal Oak in 1972, he wanted to create something that was akin to a bracelet that just happened to have a timepiece attached, and that was his guiding thought. He considered himself a jewelry designer first and a watch designer second. So it does have the look of a bracelet, all of a piece with one form flowing seamlessly into the next. You can see the bracelets held to the case using screws and bars, which is a nice secure way of building a watch, more so than spring bars. And then we have removable links here fixed in place by screws on both sides of the clasp. The clasp internally features satin and media blast. And you can see it's a sequential close, one side before the other, and a twin trigger release. It is thick gauge steel, considerably stronger than the pre-2012 version of the clasp. Now, the rounded octagonal bezel was originally inspired by a vintage diving helmet, and then we have these white gold, very slightly recessed hexagonal bolts, and they are bolts. That's how their slots can be aligned all the way around. The crown is also a hexagon, and it is actually a push-down crown. The watch is 50 meters water-resistant, but the Jumbo has a push-down crown, so I don't recommend you swim with this watch. The bezel is famously intricate. It is satinated on the top, polished on its side, and then has a very small satin lip. You can also see the gasket below the bezel, expressed as a sort of hairline accent on the Royal Oaks. It's more prominent on the Jumbos. So these little hex screws, or bolts I should say, they are white gold, and you can see the difference between the warmth of white gold and silvery steel. The dial, pantograph cut. Since 2012, this has been done in-house at Audemars Piguet, but still cut on a vintage mimicry engine that takes a big template and then makes this little hobnail pattern. And the closer you get, the more intricate it clearly is. You can see that the lathe moves in circles that are concentric from the center out. We have white gold hands, logo, and indices, and you know this is a post-2012 because it has the logo at 6 o'clock, and then it doesn't have little Arabic numerals outboard of the indices. That's the real obvious difference between a pre-2012 and a post. That and the post has a date disc that's the same color as the dial. Now we'll do a little lume shot here. It's actually got a pleasing amount of lume. It's considered to be a sports style watch, and certainly it was sporty by the standards of the 70s, but today it's more of a all-arounder or a very sporty dress watch. White gold hands logo and indices are used specifically because they reduce oxidation, tarnish, and discoloration over time. The watch has a kind of quirky quickset mechanism because of the JLC 920 Bausch that forms the basis for Audemars Piguet caliber 2121. So you can see I've changed the date now, and I roll back and forth, ratcheting the date forward between 10 p.m. and 12 a.m. That's how the semi-quickset system works on these old JLC-based jumbos. On the case back, again, you can see monoblock. This is all one piece. So instead of having a bezel, a mid case, and a case back, as you have on the later 15202s and all 16202s, you could see that, like the original jumbo, this case and case back were milled out of a single piece of steel. And that's something that takes more time, energy, and costs money, which is why AP doesn't do it anymore. On the reverse, you see we have more assemblies, and we actually have a JLC-based caliber 2121. The 2121 is based on the JLC 920, and Bausch created at the behest of the Holy Trinity, that is Patek, Vacheron, and AP. JLC delivered it to them on a special custom commission in 1967 with the understanding that JLC would never use the movement itself, nor would it ever be sold to JLC's other movement customers. And it is ultra thin. The base movement only 2.4 millimeters thick and only 3.05 millimeters thick with the date here. We have a beryllium ring that runs all the way around, and the rotor mass sits on that. There are 4 ruby roller jewels that allow the mass and the ring to be super close hauled to the base plate and the bridges, but with no danger of contacting them under conditions of shock. It's a unidirectional winder with a 40-hour power reserve. It's got an upgrade by AP in the form of a free-sprung Gyromax style balance for more precise adjustment and stability against shock. All this pivots on 36 joules, and it beats away at the vintagey rate of 19,800 vibrations per hour, marking it as a product of the late 60s. Now, of course, the finishing and the manufacture of the movement, it's all by AP in-house, and it has been for some time. You could see there's a sunburst on the ratchet wheel above the barrel, as well as the crown wheel core, broad, luminous, abrasive wheel stripes across the bridges, a skeletonized and sharply internally beveled rotor that's a work of art in its own right. Look at all those sharp interior bevels where bevels meet in a crease. Difficult to do, time-consuming, and the kind of thing you don't see as much on AP watches. But the real difference finishing-wise between this and the 7121 on the new jumbo is the quality of the beveling, which really slows down the production process. You can see it's rounded, mirrored, and that the same treatment is lavished on all of the jewel and screw sinks, with locating pegs used to locate the bridges on the base plate below, polished on their tops, and all screws black polished, mirror finished on their tops with chamfered slots and circumference. This is as good as it gets. Reach out to Team Mosso at the 1916company.com for purchase and pricing details.